Hello and welcome to Pickles Garage. Today we're going to be reviewing and displaying how to use a freeze/frost plug installation kit. If you saw my other recent video, you saw that you are able to do it with fairly basic tools, but some of the freeze plugs are in kind of weird areas, and so it helps to have specialized tools like this in order to make the job a lot easier. The reason this is going to turn into a review as well is just because it is such a specialty tool. There are negatives that come with trying to buy something like this online. Now this one specifically is the FreeTech Frost Plug Installer Removal Tool Set, and it was purchased on the ever popular online shopping area, which is great because it does have decent return options. And it's also a bad thing because it has decent return options, which is what you're about to see. So I'll go ahead and pop this open. Case is kind of cheap. This is the cheapest one that you can find on that sort of website. And that is also part of the negative, is because, yeah, it's great that you get the cheaper option, but what tends to happen is people are going to use these and then return them. So as you can see, this is the removal tool. It's in pretty good shape. The bar's not too bad. This does have some surface rust on it, which is concerning in itself. But we're gonna keep moving down the line and we get to this. Immediately caught my eye around the edges of the casing here. And when we pull this out, you'll see that it was very well used, put back wet, and it rusted while it was sitting. So that's extremely frustrating, naturally, to have spent even $58 on this thing and it show up in this poor of condition. But that's what happens, is people will buy these, use them, return it. And I don't even really blame the website, to be honest, just because, you know, the person probably said that it showed up and they didn't need it anymore, or, you know, something like that. That doesn't require them to visually inspect the equipment to make sure that it's in good shape. So had they just said that they used it and, you know, something was wrong, they didn't need it anymore, maybe this would have been inspected, they would have noticed that it was in poor shape, the guy may not got his money back. So I have to kind of deal with this. So that is one of the negatives, is that you're gonna have situations like this where it's in really bad shape. I'm going to try and clean this off, but it is extremely disappointing that this is the condition that it showed up in. So keep that in mind. If you are going to buy this online, the very cheapest option is likely going to be the one that people gravitate towards to use and then send back. So you might end up with situations like this, like I have. There are more expensive ones, and if you can potentially rent this online, I would go with that. So all that aside, the review is very poor on this. I do think it will function fine, but when people abuse the equipment and then just send it back, it is very disappointing. So keep that in mind, buyer beware. I will say it is a little disappointing how aggressively it rusted. I know you're not supposed to put away tools wet, but the fact that it got as bad of condition as it did and as rusty as it did in that, I imagine, shorter period of time is definitely a negative on this piece of equipment. It is the cheapest option, so hopefully if you spend a little bit more money, maybe you would get one that wouldn't have this sort of situation. But this was about $58. It went all the way up to about $75 to $100, I think, online on that Now River style website. But I will say it's a lot cheaper than my local auto parts store that was trying to sell this for about $151, which is insane. So I'm going to dive into the use here. Naturally, with any specialty tool, you're going to only use it a handful of times, which is why people buy it and return it. But you're just going to find the size you need, which is naturally the super rusty one for me. It comes with this ring, and you're just going to put the bar in place, and then this is going to thread around, which hopefully it still does with the damaged threads. So that is that step. It's going to be a little firm, but it's still going to be able to move around in that sort of socket. And then eventually we're going to get to the point where we're hitting this in place. But before we do that, let's show how to remove with the specialty tool. With my other video, I used a claw hammer to just hit it in place. I hate to make you bounce back and forth between videos, but I'd rather show you how to use it with the specialty tool on this video. But basically, if you have clear access to something, using a 16-ounce claw hammer to just hammer it in the center of it, it works amazing. So let's show you how to use it with the specialty tool, and then we'll go ahead and show you the installation. Okay, so now we are going to go ahead and remove that plug. You see, I already have one plug installed. That was with the basic tools from my video showing that you can do this job with more at-home stuff. I didn't show another tip that I'll show you guys. So I used a mallet, like a rubber mallet, to hit that in place. But you can also take a sort of big washer and place it over, and then hit it with your claw hammer and get it into place as well. So the key there is the angle. Just make sure you're hitting it as straight with the block as possible. But right now I'm going to show you the removal with the specialty tool that it comes with in that package. What you have to do is you're going to take drills and you're going to drill a hole that's slightly smaller than this here. And so I'm going to do a pilot light with, or a pilot hole with a 3/16, and then I'm going to step it up to a 7/32 and see if I can go ahead and run with that. I might need a half, but I will let you know. So you're going to do that with your standard drill, and then you're also going to have your long ratchet with a 5/18 to go ahead and twist this in. So effectively this turns, but it's locked in place. So eventually the threads will get to a point where this is pushing against the block and it pulls the plug out. So I'm going to go ahead and drill on this one to the left here, and we will start with the removal. So you'll see I already got my pilot hole. The hardest part with this, honestly, is the only real reason I could justify using this specialty tool is if it's in a tight confined area, but that means that you're going to have the same issue with your drill. So I had to kind of hit it at an angle, but I don't think it'll be the end of the world here. The other issue is, you know, naturally there's a bunch of metal shards everywhere now, which I also don't love, but I'm going to be flushing my whole cooling system anyways, but that's just kind of how it is. So I'm going to see how we're looking with that. I do think it's going to be a little too small, so I'm going to step it up to the 4th, and we will get this threaded in here. So, like I said, that would be kind of frustrating, like it will be in the rear, to still get close enough to make it worth it. Sorry about hitting the camera there, but I think we're still focused. Yep. Alright, there's a little bit of a bite there, so I might clean up the hole a little bit, and then I will get this started and then refocus you guys. Alright, so cleaned up the hole a little bit. Like I said, 5/8 long ratchet, and we're just going to be cranking this slowly. So you don't want to make the hole too big and ruin the opportunity to get some grip here, because otherwise this isn't going to work. It is a really, really long bolt. I don't know why they did it that way. I guess if it's like a really tight location, but it is kind of weird because it is going to take a while before this starts actually getting anywhere we need to be. It does feel a little looser than I'd hope, because there's really not a whole lot of material for there to be generating threads, because it's only probably a millimeter or so thick. So we're just gonna hope this actually works as it's intended to do. We're getting a little closer to the wall. I'm trying to figure out how exactly I want to line up the bracket. I think I kind of want to do it like that. So closer, closer, closer. Slow going right now, but once I get my hand out of the way, I'll be able to crank on it. We're starting to get to a point where we're getting to the wall where it'll come into contact. And then, yep, like that. And then it should start pulling the plug itself out. Nothing yet. And it's starting to feel very loose, so I think it just ate up the the threads that it generated. So like I said, didn't really seem to work here. Unless it was a brand new plug, I would assume that maybe it could pull itself out, but I'm gonna end up having to effectively torque this out in a similar way that I did the others with the basic tools. So as far as recommendation for that piece, I would say it doesn't really work, which is unfortunate. I was more excited about this than I was the installation tool. But yeah, see, it's completely loose. So that is unfortunate. I wasn't really getting any feedback that it was even starting to budge. So once again, review on the plug removal itself is a don't buy, which realistically is the only reason you'd buy this whole set to begin with. But I will still review the installation tool when we get to a point where we could start hammering that in. Alright, so I removed it with the good old-fashioned claw hammer, and I'm just going to use the magnet and just see if from that drilling we had any metal come in. And yep. So, focus. So, really not a good tool all around. Gets metal in your engine area. Granted, it's just in the cooling system, so it's not the end of the world, but it's also not great. Could damage some of the rubber moldings and some of your other stuff. I'm still going to attempt to use it on the rear one, just because there's really not a lot of room for me to work with back there. But I'm going to try and give it the best possible shot by squirting a bunch of WD-40 around that one and just seeing if any of that works. But yeah, so poor review on that regard. Just do one more check here. And nothing really. So just that first batch. But like I said, took it out with a claw hammer. Just dung dung dung. And we're good to go. So I am now going to review the installation tool itself. I have played around with it a little bit, but hoping for the best here. I'm going to give it the best possible shot, and we'll go from there. And here is our new spark plug. I did something to this one I didn't even mention in my previous video, just because I honestly don't really do it often, and I don't think it works, is people will say that you should freeze these, and so it makes it a little bit smaller, and it makes it a little easier to install. But the thing is, the time it takes for you to play around with it and get it lined up, you pretty much warm it in your hands. And so I honestly don't think it super works, but I did for this one, and I will tell you that is something that people say they have a lot of success with. So any potential edge you can get, might as well take. So let me get the tool. I'm going to see if I could do it with this exact angle, and then we'll be back. Okay, so you just put it over the cap and line it up. You're trying to get it as flat as possible. I'm going to try and do a couple hard whacks on the initial because I need to get started. And that is what I imagine would happen. So it didn't land flush, and it only did the bottom. I don't feel like I can get it straightened. So part of the issue is it moves around a little bit. Like, you tighten it as tight as it goes so that it doesn't move, but you're hitting it with a hammer. So naturally, any potential edge it can get, it will take, and then it's almost impossible to get it unscrewed, which is what I'm struggling with off camera here. But I got it realigned here. I got it kind of lined up. I kind of want to hit it at a lower angle, but it just pops itself out. So sorry the camera's moving. You're right in the splash zone. But yeah, I don't really think this works, and I know it only looks like I've attempted this a couple times, so I might not know what I'm talking about, but
you can just kind of tell right away that this tool is not going to make this job any easier. So essentially, you're supposed to line it up, hit it with a hammer, call it a day. But like, you can just tell it's not transferring the hits at all. So I will say that neither of these tools, both the installation and the removal, are at all worth the money. Like I said, I spent $60 on the tool itself, and that was the absolute cheapest version. They go upwards of $151, and I would say at this point, don't buy it.